All right. Hello, how are you doing? Good to be here. I hope that you can see me. If you're joining live, hi, how you doing? Hope you can hear me. If you drop a comment in the message in the LinkedIn below, I'll see it. If not, that's fine. If you are watching the replay, please drop a comment in anyway. I'd love to read them and see what you've said and what your thought, what your thinking is. But what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about. I'm going to show my. Oh, it's my banner, isn't it? I'm going to show you, I've got a little presentation. It's not really a presentation too much. So if you're listening via audio only, don't worry about it. You'll be able to understand everything we talk about anyway. Now, what we're going to talk about is you've set OKRs. Now what? Right now, what do we do after we set OKRs? Many people go through that process. And this is really about the weekly execution cycle. Okay. So with the weekly cycle, what are you doing? Let's get into it. What we're doing here is we've set our objectives. We've gone through this process of setting objectives. We've got our key results. We've done all of this, the workshops. We've aligned. We're happy with what we've got here. We've written them down. We've then done an all hands kickoff. We've presented our objectives and key results to our team, to the company, to the whole company. Everyone's excited about them. We've set up posters. We've done emails. We've sent them all around. We've done all of the things, right? We've got everything. We're ready to go with OKRs. We're ready to get started. But now what? Right now, what do we do after all of that? What do we do after we've announced our OKRs and we're getting started? Now, right now, today is the 22nd of April. Now that's for most people, that's 3 weeks into the quarter. Many organizations, especially the first time round, often the announcement of the OKRs comes a bit later than the start of the quarter. So we're now getting to the stage of like, well, now that we've done this, what do we do now? And it can be anticlimactic. Now, what happens if you haven't done this is nothing, right? That's the problem, right? So if you launch your OKRs and then you don't do anything, then all you've got is bits of words on a piece of paper, nice words. Then it's just like having the mission statements on the wall that don't mean anything. The question is, how do you make that into something that really matters for your organization? Excuse me while I deal with technology here. And the answer to that is through the weekly execution cycle. The weekly execution cycle is how you make things happen. Now, why are we doing this, and how do you run a weekly execution cycle? The way that I like to think about this is basically to ask the question, what are you trying to do? And what you're trying to do, why have you set OKRs? It's to deliver results. So everything that you do in your weekly execution cycle needs to be about delivering results. And what you've decided with OKRs is that these results, these objectives, and these key results are very important to us. So you want to structure your entire weekly execution cycle around how do I get results out of this? And so what that means in practice, and I'm going to talk about the Eisenhower prioritization matrix here. So let me bring this up big on screen. If you're looking at the screen, if you're not, I'll describe it. The Eisenhower prioritization matrix is a 2x2 or a 4-blocker, depending on how you like to think about these things, where at the top is important, at the bottom is not important, on the left is urgent, and on the right is not urgent. And what happens in our daily lives, and especially in our work life, is that we have important and urgent things in the top left. And these are fires. These are things that it's important and it's urgent, and we tend to put attention on these things, and that tends to dominate our weekly meetings normally. In the bottom left, we have not important but urgent. Now, these are interruptions that turn out not to be important. If someone sends an email and wants a response or whatever, this is the kind of thing that can consume a huge amount of time, right? But and it feels like you're doing a good work, but you're not. On the bottom right is the not important and not urgent things, the nice to haves. We've got a diagram here of flowers, but basically this might be new ideas. It might be stuff that's just extra features, whatever they are. They're very tempting to do because there's not much pressure on them, so we tend to get attracted to them. But they're not as important as the important but not urgent things, which tend to be the things that we've written our OKRs about. So what you're trying to do in your meeting, when you're trying to deliver results, what you need to do is you can't just put out fires. You can't just be doing the important and urgent things. And if you do the things that are not important, you're not delivering the right results. So you want to get attention on the important and not urgent things. And what that means in practice is that you want to move attention from the not important and not urgent things, and from the not important and urgent things, and from the important and urgent things, to the things that are not urgent and not important, right? So you want to move all the attentions from everywhere else into the top right hand corner. That doesn't mean you don't do anything in the other areas, right? Especially the important and urgent things. Those things often need to get done. However, frequently enough, you can leave some of that not done, right? Um, and it's sometimes better to leave some fires burning and focus on the things that are not urgent but are really, really important, because often enough, those things effectively are like a fire brigade. These things help you put out the fires much more effectively. Those things help you stop fires at source. So eventually you have fewer fires, right? Now, that can be painful, but you have to do it. Now, the mechanism for doing this, or really what you're trying to do here, is get the attention on the OKRs, the not urgent and important things. And what that means in practice is turning those not urgent and important things into actions, right? That's what attention means. It's partially about the time that you're spending on this. It's partially about how you're structuring literal attention, like literally what people are spending their time talking about, and so on. But it's also specifically about actions. And I've got a diagram here of actions. You could have a to-do list, you might have a Kanban board, you might have some sort of Scrum process, you might have a regular project plan with a Gantt chart, or whatever you're doing. But whatever you're doing, the things that matter in your business are the things that you have actions about. And the actions are what drives results. Because if you're not doing actions, you're not creating results, right? So to go back to that whole not important and important and not urgent things, you want to make sure that those things are generating actions which get done, right? Now, the mechanism for doing this, the tool for doing this, is of course, the meeting, right? That's your main tool for creating actions and for making actions happen and to make sure that the right actions are happening. Now, one of the things that happens in meetings, and meetings are obviously a challenge, right? They often feel like a waste of time. People talk about the amount of time that you waste in meetings. The point you need to be doing with things that are important, if your OKRs are important, the objectives are the important things, you need to make sure that the meetings are useful. Now, one of the things that happens in meetings often enough, there's some sort of debate, some sort of discussion about what should we do, what's the right thing we should be doing, what's the wrong thing, all that sort of stuff. And someone will always ask this question. Someone in most meetings asks, "What are we really trying to achieve here?" Right? And that's a great question, because actually it causes people to stop and think, "What are we trying to do?" And then that helps us to make decisions. Now, the answer to that question is the objective and key results. Right? That's the answer to that question. Um, so hey Holly, I can see you commented. Love to see you stream. Lovely to see you as well. Lovely to see you watching. Anyway, so the objective and key result is the answer to that question. What are we really trying to achieve here? And so that is one way that when you're having those debates, you can use OKRs to guide the questions, right? But what you want to do for most meetings now, this is like in regular regular sort of meetings, meetings that you might be having about problem solving or whatever. You want to do those kinds of things, but also most people have some sort of weekly meetings. Now, here's my advice about weekly meetings. Oh, hi Michael, nice to see you here as well. And love the connection of important and not urgent stuff. And okay, I've never seen it so clearly spelled out. Thank you very much. So when you're having these regular weekly meetings, the challenge that you need to do is make sure that you don't turn them into status update meetings. You want no status update meetings. And why do we have no status update meetings? Because a status update is basically each person in the group going around saying what they've done and then getting defensive about it, usually. And often enough, that's actually just a sequential set of one-on-ones where the manager's talking to this person about, or the leader, it's not necessarily a manager, it might be some sort of a cross-functional leader like a product manager. Let's talk to this person, let's talk to this person, let's talk to this person. If it works really well, sometimes people will interact about that, but all we're doing is sharing status. This can be done in an email. This can be done in some sort of tool. We can update the status there. We can get everyone to go and have a look at it. Now, it's important that everyone does understand the status, but there are other ways of doing that apart from a meeting, and just having a one-way reporting meeting is a waste of everybody's time. But the other thing that I think is really important about meetings is, which is unusual for people who are getting into OKRs and sort of starting to use OKRs, is don't have an OKR meeting. Let's not have a meeting about OKRs. Like often people say, all right, it's our weekly OKR review meeting, and we go through each of the objectives and each of the key results, and we say, what have we done on this? What have we done on that? And it feels like the right thing to do because it's kind of obvious, right? but it's not that helpful. The reason is because it just turns into exactly that kind of status update meeting. It turns into a debate, or it turns into an existential crisis of, well, what are we trying to do? And then we have to go from first principles on, that's the key result. What's the plan? What are we doing? And we're going all the way back from there. And it's a very time consuming process. So what's the solution to this? What do we actually need to do? Here's what I suggest. Have meetings about plans, right? So you've got your OKRs, you've got your objectives, you've got your key results. People in the organizations, whether they're different functions or products or what, or functional groups, cross-functional groups, or whatever groups they are, or individuals or leaders, will have plans. And their plan is basically, what am I planning to do this quarter, right? And the plan is effectively a document that is intended to deliver the objective and key result, right? So this document, we've written it down. I always advise people, write down your plans, because if you haven't written it down, it becomes something that's waffly and in the air. Ideally, write it down as a document, not as a presentation, because documents are a little bit more concrete. You can do things with them, and they require a little bit more thought to go into them, but they're much more concrete to be able to talk about. If you stick them into some sort of project plan, the Gantt chart, or whatever else you do whatever you do. Do the thing that you do. I think there are good ways of doing it and less good ways, but doing it in some way is better than not doing it at all. So have your meeting about the plan, right? We've reviewed this plan at this stage, hopefully. That's probably a session for another live stream. But you've got this plan. Let's review the plan. Let's go through this. And what are we doing with this when we review the plan? We're talking about progress, problems, and proceedings. That's great alliteration, but it's a bit hard to understand. What I mean is progress, problems, and actions, right? So what you don't want to actually sort of like create the plan in the meeting. We've already done that work. Let's look at the plan and see how we're doing. Let's quickly say, what have we progressed? Where are we up to with this plan? How far have we got to with this plan? What's going on? And that's different to a status update, because you have a plan. You can say, well, we've done these things here. We don't have to explain everything without context. We have the context. What problems have we encountered? This is also like, what learnings have we had? What's new in this? We did this, we did that. Good, well done, right? We also discovered that this is really hard. That's an interesting problem. Now, the final thing here is, what are the actions? What are the things that you're going to be doing next, right? And that partially is about just, part of that is about saying, here's the plan. We're going to be doing those things next. And that's kind of obvious, right? But so often when there's a problem, you need to do something different to what's in the plan. So this is actually a change to the plan. How are you adapting your plan? But further than that, every now and again, sometimes when you're doing this, you want to ask OKRs type questions about the plan, right? And those questions are things like, does this action in the plan, does this thing that we're doing, does this plan even, but does the action or does the solution to the problem, does it help us? Specifically, does it help us meet our objectives and deliver our key results? And this is where you get a good connection between the people in the meeting, and if you can collaborate and debate whether this is a good plan, right? How does this action help? How does it help us? Like, let's try and understand really what we're trying to do here. We don't want just a dead plan that we're executing blindly. We want to really understand, how does this actually help get to the result? Is there a better way, right? As we go through the quarter, especially as we come into we run into problems, we do learnings and so on, we should discover that there's a better way than we thought on certain parts of this. Maybe there's a whole chunk of this plan we don't need to do. And there's no point in saying, here is my plan, I'm executing my plan, I have executed the plan, or we have executed the plan, if at some point in the quarter you could have figured out, there's a better way, we shouldn't do this plan, we should do something else. Let's cross out this whole section of the plan. Let's just not do it. Let's do this instead. Let's instead of running a massive marketing campaign, let's just write a press release, and that's actually going to get the right result, or whatever we're doing. Now, I'm not a marketing guru, but you understand the point of this, right? There's some things that you discover an easier or better way to get to the result you're trying to get to. And this is the power of OKRs, because you've got the objective and the results you're trying to drive, and that's your North Star, that's your guiding thing. But then you're comparing your plan and you're adapting your plan as you go, right? As opposed to having your plan as the what's the word? Your plan is not the written in stone plan that you're then executing and testing everything against that. You're testing everything against the result you're trying to get, but you're reviewing and talking about your plan on a regular basis in that context. Okay. Next thing I'd ask, the next kind of question I ask about this is, when you're having these review meetings, when you're going through the plan, is there a better way? I think I've kind of addressed that already. No, we did address that. How does this action help? Is there a better way? Um, and the next question is really, how do we know? Right? If because often enough this is an opinion, right? So someone thinks this is the better way because I think it's the better way, or this is what's going on, or this action helps because of this. And how do we know is an interesting question because it's not a challenge to the person, it's an inquiry. We're trying to understand how do we understand this better? How do we get better at understanding what it is that we're trying to do and how what we're doing is attached to the results that we're getting. Now, what's going on here really is that then people are sort of learning about different things. Now, if you're not careful with this kind of meeting, it ends up being one person defending their plan. What you really want is everyone working together and all learning about the plan, learning about the business, learning about how these actions in different parts of the business and different parts of this team contribute to the key results you're trying to get. And of course, the purpose of all of this discussion is to come up with the answer to should we change anything? Should we change anything about the plan, about the actions we're carrying out, about the resources we're we're employing on this, and so on? Should we change anything? That's an important. Um, I can see Michael Tomaszewski has put up an interesting quote. So I'm going to see if I can show this on screen. It's pretty big. Okay, cool. To discuss somebody else's suggested actions requires a culture of mutual trust in the team. I've seen meetings where input from team colleagues has been interpreted as criticism by the person responsible. Critical to be constructive and educate people to use the right vocabulary, non-confrontative. Absolutely, right? And this is the way the point of this, when you're doing what's the word? Meeting, and you're reviewing people's plans, you're actually sort of getting a plan out that's someone's personal work. And in some sense, they need to be adapted enough to realize that it's okay to change the work. It's, we were evolving here. We don't have to have here's my perfected plan, and every change to the plan is a personal insult. There's something about that. But you need to be able to, as a leader in this organization, whether you're the product leader or the manager or whatever you are, you really need to be able to understand how to create a collaborative environment. And then this is actually in some ways the level up of what you're trying to do, because you're trying to create a culture where people are talking about their plans and collaborating on it. And what I really want in an exec team is to see because I work with exec teams mostly, but I mean in any team, but as an example, in an exec team, the marketing manager and the sales manager will have their marketing and sales plans, and they'll be talking about that in the exec team about how do they get these results. But I want the engineering leader, the engineering manager, whether that's the VP or the chief technology officer, whoever they are, to be looking at this plan and trying to understand it and asking good questions about it. Now, some of these questions might be dumb questions, right? Because they're not familiar with the technology, with the marketing, and vice versa, right? Because the marketing people might be asking a silly question about the engineering team, and that's fine. But because the purpose of this team is to get the brains trust of the company. This is the leadership team of the company, right? We're there because we're a team, and for a team, we need to work as a team. So we need to educate each other about our plans. We need to ask those questions about our plans, and then we need to help each other improve the plan. Now, some people are really bad at writing plans. So as a team, you help people write their plans. Like that's the purpose of being a team. Um, and as a leader, you need to create that environment. So this is a good tool for helping create that environment, because you're basically saying, here's the plan. Let's collaborate to improve this plan. Let's collaborate to test this plan. Let's collaborate to make sure that we as a team are comfortable with the plan that the head of marketing is carrying out. Right, as opposed to it's marketing plan, they're doing their stuff, and if we criticize it, it's us criticizing them. So I'll just remove that from the screen there. Um, so basically, yeah, collaboration is really the key to this. And as I say, it really comes down to that creating the right culture. And this is a good tool to create the culture, but also you need to create the culture to make sure that the tool works well. Um, Now, the purpose of all this, when we have the collaboration, so we're working collaboratively together. I want to wrap up now with this last slide here, which is this is the most visual slide, but I'll explain what it is for anyone listening on audio. The purpose of all of what you're doing here is you're taking all of this to the Eisenhower prioritization matrix on the left, the urgent and not urgent, important, not important. You're trying to get attention onto the not urgent things. But you're doing that by creating actions that are going to deliver this. You're trying to connect this together. And the way to do that is to have meetings about plans. Because plans are the actions, and you have a meeting about the actions, but meetings about the plans and like reviewing them and what those actions are. But you're regularly asking, how does that relate to my OKRs? How does that relate to the objective we're trying to achieve? How does that help us deliver the key result? And that's the way to ensure the actions and the plans are going to deliver the results you really want, as opposed to let's start from the objectives and key results and have meetings about those. If you do that, you don't always end up with actions, and you end up with this existential crisis and people trying to create plans on the fly. To do this well, of course, you need to get everyone to create a plan. And everyone needs to create a plan for the OKRs. Now, ideally, you do that in conjunction with developing the OKRs. As that process is going, you're developing your objectives, your key results, and you're developing plans that go along with it. But those plans evolve over the quarter as you learn more, especially through this process, right? But if you haven't got plans, then the first thing to do, even before you run this execution cycle, is to create plans. Like, let's write down some plans. They can be a 1-pager, they can be a 10-pager, they can be a half page, they can be a Gantt chart, they can be whatever they want to be, right? But just create the plans, right? Figure out your sprint plans, like what the series of goals would be, some user stories, whatever it is you're doing. Create those plans, and then you can talk about the plans in relation to the OKRs. Now, if you found this interesting at all, if you think this was an interesting angle, what I do is OKR training. And by the way, I'll just put this on the screen for a moment. If you want to post a comment or a question, please do it on LinkedIn and YouTube, and I'll see it here and we'll address it. I'll have time for questions at the end as well. So I'm struggling with technology here, but anyway. So what I do is I do OKR training, I do OKR workshops. We help people set up their OKRs and write good OKRs. We do OKR coaching, how you execute them, working with executive teams and other managers and other leaders. I do OKR retrospectives, especially in the situation where, now I find, by the way, the OKR retrospective is super useful for my customers who are working on who already have OKRs. Like, if they're already using them, then we do a retrospective to start off with to see, well, what needs to change. But even on the very first round through, we set OKRs, we start executing them. Then at the end of the quarter, we do a retrospective, because that's how we learn how to set better OKRs in the future. So I highly recommend that. Then where my focus is mainly on growth company exec teams, because I work really well with growth companies. I understand them. We speak the same language, and the exec teams are where I think most of the benefit comes from when you're doing OKRs. I always think the higher up the organization you can be working, the more impact you can have with OKRs. However, I'd also work with individual leaders and managers around the organizations, and product managers and so on as well. So if you're interested in that, get in contact. If you want to work with me, then the ways to get in contact is through LinkedIn is the best way. You throw my LinkedIn up there. You can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I'm very happy to talk to anyone to hear from you about that. Feel free to get in contact if you're interested in this. Okay, we'll go back to the comments. Freddie has said a comment here. Let's pull that up on screen. People tend to get bogged down by details or waffling about everything and anything they do in meetings. Yes. One thing I found to work really well is to guide the individual or team by asking them to share one thing, the thing that moved the needle, because doing 1,000 things may not be a matter if they're not fit for purpose. But if you cannot articulate the one thing that can make a difference, it helps the individual to be more focused. That's a fantastic piece of advice, because this is actually closely related to the whole philosophy of OKRs. With OKRs, you're trying to get focused by saying these are the top 3 objectives, or even the one objective, if you're a fan of the single objective, which I am. But if you can do one objective, you can barely see me over Freddie's huge comment. But having that one objective, that focus, keeps people focused on it. But then the mechanism you can keep people focused on the things that are really important is always in these meetings going back to the same thing, same philosophy of what's the most important thing. Don't tell me everything. Like I did work with one company where they would have these status updates, and they'd have email status updates, and one of the managers would send around a 4-pager, because obviously if you're a manager in a team, it's not just your work, you've got a team of people. So she had 20 people, and so they'd all create like a paragraph to demonstrate what they've done this week, and she'd compile this up into a big multi-page document, which nobody would read because it's too much. So somehow you need to filter this down into the things that really matter. And the painful part here is, in some ways, a lot of the things that people do aren't don't qualify as being the things that move the needle. They're still important, but you can't necessarily just spend the whole time in a meeting making people feel like they were doing good work. You need to focus on the things that matter for this meeting, right? So, most focus on that one point, that one thing that matters, that one thing that moves the needle, and that's a really good exercise. If you do that exercise, by the way, you'll find that people will do that, people will respond, and people will communicate about the one thing that moves the needle. And then sometimes there'll be one or two more things, right? But the discipline of focusing on that one thing is a really, really useful discipline because it means that you're you don't have oh, no, I'm going to blank here. it, it means that you are getting people to focus on the important stuff and trying to get them away from like just making a massive list of things. And prioritization is a really fundamental skill for any leader. Look, okay, it's been 25 minutes. That's the end of my presentation for today. If there are further questions, I'm always happy to answer them. Please feel free to drop any questions you do have on LinkedIn or YouTube. You can drop them there now. I may be able to get to them. Otherwise, I'll respond on LinkedIn and YouTube later on. In the future, I'm going to collect together some of these questions and do a Q&A session. So please just drop them in there and I'll do a Q&A where we go through some of those questions and I'll just talk through them. But thanks for joining me. I hope that's been really interesting for you. I look forward to seeing you next time. I'm planning to do this, by the way, probably every week around about the same time. Now, at the moment, I'm hoping to do it at 12:30 Central European Standard Time, summertime, sorry. This one was at 10 a.m., but I'll experiment a little bit and see how it goes, but it'll probably be every week at about then. Next week, I'm going to have an interview with a fantastic product leader who does product consulting around Europe. He's ex-Google. He is a sort of interim product director, chief product officer, and product management consulting, product leadership consultant. And we're going to talk about how product and OKRs work together. So tune in for that one. His name's Christian Michio. He's a great guy, ex-Google. I rode from Paris to London with him. He's fantastic. Tune in for that one next week. We'll be sharing some clips of that following on from it. All right. Thanks very much. Bye-bye. Have a great day.